Welcome to another episode of Team Anywhere, where CEOs, leaders, and experts at building teams,
companies,
organizations,
and amazing cultures share how to lead from anywhere in the world. I'm your co-host on the East Coast, Ginny Bianco Mathis.
And I'm your co-host on the West Coast, Mitch Simon. And we invite you to join us to Team Anywhere. Today's leadership in the virtual and hybrid world requires flexibility and dealing well with ambiguity. It's very much about collaboration in the process of inquiry. On today's podcast, we interview the Chief People Officer of Allbirds and learn about her journey in her powerful new leadership book, Strong Like Water. Laila Tarraf will show you how to open your heart and step into the type of leadership that is required in today's chaotic world where no one has the map of what the future brings. Being a brain-centered leader myself, I can tell you that I needed this podcast more than ever. In this episode, you'll learn how Laila connected to her heart and has allowed it to strengthen her leadership, her company, and through her book and through this podcast, her readers and her listeners. Hello and welcome to another episode of Team Anywhere. I am Mitch Simon and I'm on the West Coast, and on the East Coast, I've got Dr. Ginny Bianco Mathis. I got that
Hello!
right? Yes,
You
hello.
got it.
Hello. Yes, and today in the studio, we're excited to have Laila Tarraf, Chief People Officer of Allbirds, where she's focused on building a high-performance, human-centered organization. Laila is a graduate of the Berkeley Haas School of Business and is also a guest lecturer at Berkeley Law School. She's also an author of her debut book, which we're going to talk about, Strong Like Water. She's a proud mom of her teenage daughter, Nadia, and her 8-pound Yorkie, Max. Welcome, Laila.
Thank you so much, Mitch and Ginny. I'm really happy to be here.
Great. We usually have more fun on Fridays. I don't know why that is, but we're going to have more fun today.
Awesome.
That's it. So Laila, yeah, cool. So we'd like to open up with the question, as we always do. How has your last year and a half been, and what have you learned about yourself?
I thought you said you wanted to have some fun.
I do.
Gosh, well, it's been challenging, right? It's just felt like a layering of one thing over another, right? Everything that happened with COVID, getting kicked out of our offices, and then having to figure out shelter in place, back and forth, masks, restaurants open, restaurants close. And then, all the social unrest with George Floyd's murder and Breonna. The effect that all had on our employees at Allbirds, it just felt like a pot of boiling water, right? And it kept on boiling up. And I had maybe 6 months under my belt with Allbirds before this all started happening. So I was still fairly new in role and trying to figure out the culture and the needs. My experience has been that it takes a good year or two to really understand an organization and its culture and the dynamics, because so much of it is it's just not on the surface; it's hidden. So that added just another level of difficulty. And then, of course, at home, I had a teenage daughter in her junior year having to navigate all these AP classes while figuring out distance learning and being socially isolated. So I guess, what did I learn? I learned that I'm human, that lesson keeps coming up over and over, that I don't have all the answers and it's okay, right? I saw that I was able to keep showing up week after week alongside my co-founders. We started having all hands once a week, even though we really didn't have a lot to say. We didn't have a lot of answers, but we just felt that it was really important to keep that connection and to show people that we cared and to open up a forum for people to share what they were thinking or feeling. So, I've always known that I can hold a lot of stress. I think I'm proud of how I carried myself. I mean, I definitely was triggered and had moments where I did not show up as my best. but that's okay. I think, if you just said that you finished most of my book, and I think that I really believe that when we're tested, that's where there's the biggest opportunity for growth. And so I think, the qualities that I've been developing over the last decade held up: courage, compassion, empathy, vulnerability, humor, humility, curiosity.
Yeah.
They were all put to the test.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why Ginny and I started this show was to kind of provoke everyone to say, you are being tested, and not everyone wanted to take the test, and it was really how you showed up during that time.
Oh, yeah.
Can you
Some
tell?
people hid. Yeah.
Yeah, some people hid under a rock. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey? I found out about you through New Ventures West, which is this school that you and I learned how to become coaches. Yay! We're giving high fives up here.
Love New Ventures.
Love New Ventures West. There's a plug, and today's episode is being brought to you by New Ventures West. Now, tell us about your journey to become. So at least here in San Diego, everyone has heard of and seen of Allbirds, and we're like so fascinated by the product. How did you get to become the Chief People Officer at Allbirds, and what is the Chief People Officer at Allbirds?
I'm being asked these days, was your career growth linear, and did you have this all planned out? And of course, the answer is no. I don't know anybody who maps out a 25-year career and then actually goes step by step. My undergrad was in computer information systems. I was a pretty good student. I didn't know what I wanted to study. This was the mid to late 80s, and I took a basic computer class in college. And one of my teachers said, well, this is where the future is. And I thought, great, I may as well go there. And then, as you know, I went back and I got my MBA from Haas. And I had a few years of recruiting experience under my belt. And I specialized in recruiting engineers. It was sort of the combination of my technical background, and I also had a communications minor, and I like people. And I got out of business school and I thought, okay, I'm going to get out of recruiting and I'm going to become a business person. And this was in 1998 when the internet was just in full sort of, bloom. And there was, pets.com. And I landed at a company called Webvan, which I don't know if you remember Webvan, but that was one of the first internet companies that was supposed to be this huge thing, like the last mile delivery of groceries to consumers. And it imploded after about 6 months. But because I had 6 months of e-commerce under my belt in 1999, that made me an expert. It was the beginning of the crazy time.
Yep.
That's right.
And I was recruited to go to the internet division of Walmart. They were just starting. Walmart was just starting Walmart.com, the very beginning. I was employee number 7. We didn't even have an office. We started at the Axel partner offices down in Palo Alto, or in Sand Hill Road. And over that first year, I was hired as the director of recruiting. We built the company, 250 people. And my boss at the time, her name was Jean Jackson, very tough CEO. She was the CEO of Banana Republic, ex-Disney, Nike. She's got a wonderful reputation, a very tough reputation. And she said to me after a year, she said, Laila, why don't you take this HR role? And my first reaction was, ooh, no, I'm not I'm not an HR person. I'm a business person. And she's like, well, okay, look, take it or don't take it. I don't really care. But, I've got bigger fish to fry. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. And, thank goodness she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself yet. And I was there for 7 years. We built the company to almost 700 and, over $500 million. And then it was very clear that all roads led to Bentonville, Arkansas. And I didn't want to move to Bentonville, Arkansas.
Oh my gosh.
So I just dipped my toe in the water, and Pete's Coffee had been looking for a chief people officer for a year. And I was able to land that role. And honestly, that first year, I felt like a complete imposter because I had learned HR sort of on the fly at Walmart. Here I was now at a public company with an hourly workforce, with a manufacturing roasting plant. I thought, oh, I'm going to break something. uh, but again, I think you just put one foot in front of the other, and you learn, and you're curious, and you ask questions, and you build a great team around you. And I was there for 7 years and really, really honed my craft. And then I did a few years in private equity as an advisor, and then Allbirds came calling. I had met the founders of Allbirds years earlier. In fact, I had met Joey, and we immediately liked each other. And I just knew we would do something in the future. And they actually asked me to come over and have a chat in 2017. The company started in 2016, and I'm like, no, I don't think so. I'm beyond the startup phase. And then they came back in 2019, and I'm like, okay. So yeah. So summer of 2019 is when I went back.
Wow. That's quite a story, quite a journey. And I remember when we were talking earlier, you just casually said, I think you recruited 700 people to Walmart.com. But one of the things that you really emphasized was, that's tough to recruit people to Walmart.com. In the Bay Area, everybody wants to be in the startup mode. And Walmart.com isn't necessarily considered a sexy startup.
No, especially in that sort of 2000, 2001 timeframe. It was the funniest thing. And I say this in my book is I used to go to, cocktail parties. And when I would say I was with Walmart and HR at Walmart, nobody wanted to talk to me. Oh, and when I said I was,
isn't that horrible?
Oh my God, I love Pete. And so, yeah, it was a tough sell. And, having been at both places, the challenges from an HR perspective in terms of building culture are exactly the same. The cultures were different, but the challenges in organizing and galvanizing the best of a culture while not allowing the culture to be an impediment for growth, because that's just not how we do it here. Mm-hmm. It's the same wherever you go. It's the story, the narrative is different.
Yeah. So what I want to do is I really want to get to the book because it's a leadership book.
It is.
It's strong like water. It's so I wish I could say I've finished it. I am almost finished with the book. I'm actually to the part where you share your journey with New Ventures West, actually, who we're plugging today. But tell us about Strong Like Water and why it's such an important leadership book today.
Strong Like Water it's been described as a leadership book cleverly disguised as a memoir of love and loss, which I really love. And it doesn't fall into one clean genre. You can read it in a lot of different ways. It's part memoir, as you know, because it captures a period in my life. There are leadership insights you can glean from it. And it's also a little, one review said part psychological probe. And it captures a period in my life where I lost my husband, my father, and my mother in a short period of time. This was my first year at Pete's, where I was trying to learn how to be a leader, and my daughter was 3 years old. So it was a heavy load. And as we know, as is so often the case, times of tremendous adversity become really powerful teaching moments in our lives. And for me, it was really the moment I realized that if I didn't allow myself to in essence break down, to be vulnerable, and to feel the pain associated with all those losses, that I would just become hard and emotionally brittle and unable to live my life with authenticity and courage. And I had never done that, right? My coping mechanism was always to distract and deflect, deny. It's okay. It's okay. I had this amazing ability to reframe everything to the positive. And this was one, I think, I always say the universe gives you what you need to grow. And I think I was so stuck in this narrative of I can handle anything. I'm strong and capable, that I honestly think that if it were just one loss, I may have tried to muscle my way through it, as crazy as that sounds today. But I think the combination of the three was sort of the 1, 2, 3 punch that I needed to just really get real and to see how this way that I was holding myself, while it served me for a long time and helped me to survive and a tough childhood, that was no longer serving me. And it was time to rewrite that narrative and to dig deep. And that's when I went back and got my coaching credentials, which really helped, which served to deepen my growth. And I just did a book event the other night, and it was with a bunch of young ladies, really just amazing, powerful. And one person said, well, why is it so hard to give up your narrative? And another, one of the young ladies said, I'll tell you why, because you think that you'll lose your edge and you won't be powerful and you won't be able to, be excellent in your tough business job. And it reminded me that's exactly how I felt. I thought, if I allow myself to be soft, then I'll lose my edge and I'll lose my agency. And the irony, of course, as we know, is that the journey did make me soft, but soft turned out to be strong. And that's the lesson we all learn in vulnerability. And we can understand it intellectually, but until you actually live it and experience it, at least for me, maybe I'm just a slow learner, I didn't fully comprehend what that meant. So
Yeah,
that,
yeah, I'd like to say that, I read the book and I felt like that was my journey, or it is my journey. I felt that, Ginny and I, we teach, vulnerability and transparency. I just felt that your display of vulnerability and transparency was one that I was like, I'm not even there. Like I, can't even touch that in terms of, like, not only did you feel it, but you were actually able to put it on paper, of what you were going through. And then also to see, as you're saying, that sheer ability to put it all out to the world, is strength. It's absolutely strong. And for all of us who claim we're leaders, to be able to read your book and to see that there is a place for us to go deeper in terms of just for ourselves and also as leaders, and that the strongest thing we can do, especially now, when we're connecting on different levels, that we could go deeper in being able to connect to the other people who we know are going through so many hardships.
yeah.
Right? Like we know they're going through hardships, but we don't know what those hardships are.
And
it's really true.
Also, in terms of leaders now, especially we've had quite a few wonderful speakers, such as yourself. This concept, I've had to change the leadership curriculum in the business school around compassion and vulnerability, and empathy, and how do you show that, and how does that still mean you're strong, you influence and create a culture that meets organizational goals. And there are a lot of folks coming up, and I dare say even professors, who are not embracing that yet.
Isn't that interesting? Well, so the class that I taught, that I come into to guest lecture at Berkeley, is all about, it's at the law school, and it's all about how you become a trusted advisor, sort of beyond being, just a counsel. and it focuses on all the, what we call soft skills. And
Yeah.
you're right. We took a lot of care in making sure that how we articulated what we were doing could be based in science and sort of this left brain understanding and how to have hard conversations. It's you almost feel
Yes.
like it's this sort of Trojan horse you're trying to have come in for this content to be accepted. But you know what? I am positive in 10 years that is not going to be the case, because when I think about the challenges
Agreed.
that we have at Allbirds and that every company has in terms of its leadership, it is the lack of the social emotional skills. It is not that you don't know how to whatever your
Totally.
technical functional responsibility is, right? Because there's so much focus on that, and that's important. But right, what does Marshall Goldsmith say? What got you here won't get you there. And
Right.
as you grow in your career, it is a letting go of the limiting beliefs and the behaviors that don't serve you. It is not acquiring a new skill or
Right.
learning a new program or a new tool. Well, and
And
I also think it's how do we define power, right? Really.
right.
And so all these words, I think it's interesting that have a lot of these different connotations. We're turning them on their head. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's
Mhm.
strength. I think power can very true power really embraces at the core of it is caring and love. So we could
You
have a
got
whole
it.
podcast
Absolutely.
on, on
Yes, we
training
can. I
and
love it.
connotation on
Yeah.
all these words.
Well, let's have that conversation, because what I'd like to know is how the book, how the key lessons in the book um, really can support today's hybrid leaders, today's virtual leaders, whether they're running a company, whether they're in charge of a team, um, and because what we're seeing is there's just such a big combination of how teams are showing up and where they're showing up. So how can we take the lessons of vulnerability as a strength, and power as care and love, into this new world that we're in, or how are you using them at Allbirds?
I think something I'm finding myself say a lot these days is that leadership is an inside out job. And I think that it's really important for leaders to take time to self reflect and examine our stories, to really start to break down our blind spots so that we can lead and we can show up more authentically and integrated. That is how we will be able to lead in the world that we live in today, in the VUCA world, as they call it, right? I think
Hmm. Hmm.
allowing ourselves to feel whatever comes up, uh, the rage that comes up at the social injustice, the grief that came up last year around so much loss, no matter who we were, allowing ourselves to really, really stay and process those feelings is what will make us more resilient and stronger. I think that,
Hmm.
Ginny, to what we were just discussing a second ago, this understanding, this realization that we need to bring in both sides of strength and power, the driving for results, the high performance, all these sort of driving, striving, um, with the qualities of tenderness and compassion and nurturance, right? It's the yang
Right.
and it's the yin, and whatever that combination is for each of us, that alchemy, right? When they're combined skillfully, I think that is the basis for 21st century leadership. And then on a very,
Perfect.
very personal level, I would say my biggest learning has been on this journey is that if we don't learn as individuals to love ourselves and to forgive ourselves, we will not be able to show up in the right way and lead, especially through tough times, because you're always projecting. And if you don't love yourself, and which I know sometimes can sound like, oh, love yourself, oh, brother, but no, really, really, right? Then you're projecting.
Yes.
And so it is, I don't know if you know Louise Hay. She was the publisher of Hay House. And before she died, I saw this interview with her, and she said, I've been doing this sort of personal growth stuff for, I don't know, 60 years. And she said, in the end, I realize it comes down to one thing, and it's self-love. That always stuck with me. And there's a lot of qualities we're trying to develop. There's a lot of learning, but in the end, that's what it really comes down to.
Could you say something about how much, how leaders right now, I'm just hearing you say this, how leaders really need to bring hope, and
That's nice.
how they can bring hope to this crazy time, which, it sounds like it's going to be crazy for another year, at least. How can leaders, first find it within themselves to even just have a smidgen of the experience that you've had to really find themselves and to appreciate who they are, and then to profoundly impact their teammates through love and caring and empathy, because we hear it so much, but we don't really hear, like, how do you do that?
Right.
And that's why we've got Laila on as our guest
That's
today.
a great, great question. Well, I don't know that I know the answer of how one maintains hope. I am wired to be hopeful in the positive and the not so positive ways, because there are times where maybe I should set it aside and recognize that things aren't so great. But that's my inclination. I do think that surviving tough times gives us an opportunity to look back and say, wow, I did that. Right. And I think what we all just went through as a planet, we should all be, for those of us that are here, saying to ourselves, you know what, that was some serious stuff, man, and we made it. So that gives me a lot of hope. And as a leader, I think people want to be led. They want to feel held. And I especially think that's true for millennials and Gen Z. And what I try to do is to show the strength in that, even if I don't know the answers, because I don't, I am confident that with the other leaders sitting around the table, we can work together, and with our employees, taking feedback from them, we can get through this. We can do it together. I think that's the only way, is all of us together. It kind of goes back to, our primordial state, which is you're stronger as part of the tribe. And I think that understanding and that positioning, I think, is the key to get through this. It is deeper, richer, more meaningful connections, even at work. That gets you through everything. And the thought just occurred to me, right? There's all these studies that are done that older people who have more of a social life, who have greater connections, live longer, right? We are wired for connection. And so I think that connection also then brings hope, that we truly care about each other as people, and together we know we can make it through, and not just like crawling to the finish line, but actually thriving. Okay, maybe right now not a lot of us are thriving, but it's out there. I truly believe that, and I lead in
Right.
that way. I think it makes a difference. I mean, it's tough right now. Now we're dealing with people who are like, I don't want to come back to work. I don't want to commute. And so how I am choosing to hold myself now is just very lightly. Like, I'm not making mandates around anything. It's all about flexibility and trying to meet people where they are, and have it be a pull and not a push. You're reminding me of this class that I taught at Berkeley. We were trying, how do you convey qualities and concepts that are more feeling and more somatic in a head sort of way to people oriented to learning through their minds. And boy,
You
I did
got
not
it.
think this was
Right.
going to be a full commercial for New Ventures West, but I guess it is. The coaching program that Mitch and I went through, in hindsight now, I can see how they did it because I was that head person. It had to make sense to me in my intellect before I would accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think something they did, I thought that was very effective and very clever, was they put you into environments that had you experience things from your different centers of intelligence. They brought in poetry. They
Mm-hmm.
brought in music. One exercise we did, which I thought was so powerful, I don't know if you did this, Mitch, was they had us go walk around. I don't remember which session this was. Go walk outside. It was in San Francisco, around the block, and we, in our heads, we said this mantra 3 or 4 times, looking at everybody. Just like me, they suffer. Just like me, one day they will die. Just like me. And at first, I'm like, oh, brother, really? Of course, because I judged everything. And and at the end of that walk, I couldn't even talk because it touched me so deeply, and I realized I had this empathy. And when you realize we're all the same, we look different on the
Right.
outside. And so I think there are ways we can get people to experience that, but it is through experiences and it is not through lecture. That's why I think it has
That's
to
right.
be through connection. Work groups, exercises, experiencing, I love David White, poetry, music. It gets into you in a different way. Going to a dojo and experiencing how you physically show up in different ways. I think that's how you do it. It's kind of exciting.
Yeah, it
I
is
agree.
exciting.
And
So let's,
those are new experiences that some of them don't exist right now.
Yeah.
In as you said, in the mainstream, if I told certain leaders or students to go through and do that, at first their reaction is exactly what you said.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. And then the growth begins to
That's
happen.
right. That's right. And when
Yeah.
there's enough
yeah,
pain,
So,
they're like,
right. So
okay.
we're in for a couple of years of growth, I think, for leaders, because it's not going to happen overnight.
Yes. Yes. That's a very good
so
point.
I'd like to get our last question. And yes, just like me, again, one of the reasons to, I think, read the book is because when I read the book, you are just like me. And I'm very head centered, so I would not pick up this book. I would be, just because of my head. And that's the reason to pick up this book. Absolutely. To get out of my head and into my heart, as we learned at New Ventures West. Another plug for New Ventures. This is like, yes,
What are y'all
supported by New
going to
Ventures
do
West.
here?
My last question is, okay, so obviously you're an incredible coach because you went to New Ventures West. I am a leader and I'm struggling because everything's changing. I don't know what to do. Cindy wants to be in the office all day and Max doesn't want to come to the office all day. And Veronica is just, a little bit scared and confused. And Joe over there is like ready to go. And I'm the leader and I don't really know. I mean, I'm working for a great company. I've got great values. What would be the coaching right now that you would have for me if I'm one of your managers at Allbirds on how to process this stuff and how to be an incredible leader in this time?
Gosh, that's a really, really hard question. I think I would start with the foundational truth that we're talking about, which is that to be a leader, you have to tap into your head and your heart. Start right just from there. And that it's okay not to have the answers, that you want to open up a dialogue, right? Leadership is no longer command and control, it's very much collaborative and a process of inquiry. it's what I'm realizing is it's a delicate balance. We talk a lot about collaboration now. It's collaboration, but it's also, as a leader, being principled and and being able to hear what's being said, to pull up the common themes, to determine um, a way forward that is sort of an 80-20. So what I mean by that is that we can share, we can talk, we can be open, but then people want to be led. So you do, I think, have to say, okay, I think this is what I'm hearing. We've sent out surveys, we've asked questions. There is no one size fits all answer. That is for darn sure. But here are the principles that we think are important to establish in how we think about, let's say, the return to work, right? Flexibility is paramount. We will have a hybrid workforce. We will have spaces that will encourage connection and collaboration, and we will have spaces that include quiet time if you want to do heads down work. So you start establishing these broad principles and give a little more detail around what flexibility means. And then you hold people as they make their way through that. And I think it is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? That is the biggest thing. Is a lot of the managers now, they want the answers. And I say, I'm sorry, I can't give you a 100% answer. I can give you guidance. I can give you principles that can anchor your discussions, but I can't give you a playbook. Maybe in 10 years we'll have a new playbook, but right now there's no playbook. And it's okay if you don't want to lead, if you want to follow for a while, that will take a different path. But if you want to lead, you have to be comfortable with navigating a bit of ambiguity, and no judgment either way. I think that's what I would say.
That's beautiful. Thank you. That was beautiful. That was just great. That's, I think, why we started this podcast, to really, really get that insight. Okay. We're going to wrap up. Laila, this has been fantastic. Where can our listeners find you?
They can find me on my website, which is lailatarraf.com. And I have all of my podcasts and my blogs on there. You can find out more about me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on Facebook. I'm just not on Twitter. Too busy.
Great. And of course, we can get your book on Amazon. So Strong Like Water.
You can get my book anywhere, Amazon or the local bookstore.
That's great. Great. Well, Laila, this has been just a pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we connected. I'm so happy, and I love your book, and I can't wait to finish it. Ginny, this has been fantastic.
And you are an incredible role model. Thank you so much for putting into words a lot of things that folks are struggling with.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you, Ginny. Thank you, Laila. Thank you to our listeners. This has been a fantastic episode. Please share this episode with your friends and colleagues, and please give us a review, because that really helps other people reach the podcast on the app that you listen to. Until next time, thank you so much for listening to Team Anywhere, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.